Do you have to go in and turn my voice down and yours up?
No, but I have to go in and, like, I have to smooth out all the peaks. You peak the mic, like, 40, not even joking, 40 times.
In 20 minutes?
Yeah. You just scream constantly.
I don't scream. I'm just loud.
Yeah.
I'm just a loud talker. You jealous?
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I liked this cemetery. I thought it was really cool. I like how, like, the forest had completely reclaimed it. You know?
Yeah. I wish we'd go at nighttime to feel spookier vibes. But I could not find any haunted history around it.
The problem is most cemeteries don't, like, they have rules that you can't be there at night. And it's to discourage against vandalism. So it's like, if we do that, I mean...
Rules are meant to be bent and broken.
Alright. Well.
I used to go ghost hunting all the time with friends.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty. That artichoke reservoir, I didn't know that was man-made.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, it is pretty
huge.
Big. It's got all, like, the drinking water of Newburyport.
Oh, so you can't swim in it?
No.
Oh, it's so pretty. I wanted to swim in it.
Yeah.
There's swans in it, so they're drinking swan poop.
Yep.
Are they fish?
I've peed in there before.
Oh my god.
So.
You talk about incriminating yourself.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful location.
Yeah, like, as I said earlier, I really liked how the forest just completely reclaimed that place. Because most cemeteries you go in, they're really well kept, the lawn's mowed, like the city is, on it. But I was reading about this one, and it's volunteers that take care of it.
Yeah, and they tried to get the city involved. I was reading that article too. Yeah. And I think the city does a little bit, but more along the lines of if they can get volunteers to do it, they don't do it themselves.
Yeah, I think it's just fine how it is though too, because
I like it. I mean, there's still a path.
Yeah, there's a little path. The forest is all there. It's very aesthetically pleasing for a graveyard. I liked it a lot.
The only reason my paranoid self, the only reason I didn't like it is I get so nervous. I'm like, I just kept apologizing under my breath. I'm like, I'm so sorry if I'm stepping on you. I'm so sorry if I'm stepping on you, because we don't know where they are. There's markers, but you don't know, and there's no clear path.
Yeah, I read that as well, that they don't know how many bodies are there. They've never done, like, the radar, like, testing there. So and Quakers were known for having unmarked graves often as well.
I was reading that. They said that it was very common practice to bury loved ones without markers.
Yep.
Which kind of makes sense, given their, like, beliefs and ideology.
Yeah, their ideology is interesting. So, like, the Quaker movement started in England right around the same time as the Puritans, who we talked about last time. But the Quakers they had a very different mindset than the Puritans. Puritans were like a very, they believed God was judgmental, and they had a very strict moral code, and they were just like these straight edge, hardline people. Whereas the Quakers, they didn't believe in church. They didn't have churches. Instead they had meeting houses. They didn't believe in any kind of, like, clergy or they just were anti-establishment is what they were. They did not like the establishment of religion, and they believed that religion was found within yourself and through personal experience.
So you're a Quaker?
Pretty much. It has a lot of similarities to, like, the modern day, like, agnostic movement. Except they were not, they didn't believe in just a God. They still considered themselves as Christian, and they still, like, followed a lot of the Christian teachings, but they didn't believe in any of the institution of it. They believed
that... Well, they were onto something, weren't they?
They were.
Look at the institutions.
I know. Well, it's kind of interesting. As we've been researching a lot of this stuff, whether it be the Puritans, the Quakers, Martin Luther, there's a lot of similarities just in these movements again and again and again. And the biggest similarity that I noticed is it's always a group of people trying to, like, leave the institutionalized religion under the guise of you don't need the institution. So that's kind of like what Martin Luther did when he split from the Catholic Church and made Protestantism, because he didn't believe in the Catholic institution, and that was kind of the whole premise, is that God's within you, this and that. The Puritans actually did the same thing when they split from the Church of England. They were saying that, the Church of England they held on to too much Catholic ideology, and that they don't need the Church of England. They still they very quickly evolved into their own institution, though, and then they adopted all
Protestants.
As did Protestants.
As did most.
I'd be sure that, the Quakers, they said they were anti-establishment. Again, they just replaced everything with some kind of an establishment. Like, churches became meeting houses. They still had, pastors, and they met every Sunday.
Well, and I'm sure if you still had those meeting houses and stuff today, I mean, I'm sure there are some.
Yeah.
I'm not as knowledgeable in that area, but I'm sure even that they are an institution after a while too. In capitalist America, that's how we get by.
But kind of what I noticed is just again and again and again, these groups of people leave saying they're anti-establishment, and then they become an establishment themselves. And it's very similar to the agnostic movement of today, saying that kind of just believing in God but not believing in any institution. How long before that belief ends up getting an institution behind it?
I'm sure there probably already is.
Yeah, there probably is. Or at least the early starts of one. But yeah, the Quakers were really interesting for that. So that cemetery as well. The reason I was interested in it to begin with was I had heard folklore or an urban legend in the area that cemetery was actually moved there in the 1850s, and it used to be in downtown Newburyport. So I started doing research into that, because that's also where the whole possibility of haunted stuff was kind of, because not only is it spooky aesthetically, but if that is true that they moved all these graves, of course there'd be some kind of weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
But
well,
go ahead.
So I was reading in Newburyport, they were very anti-Quakers, jailed Quakers.
All of Massachusetts was for a while. Yeah, the Puritans
West
did not
Newbury was one of the first places, and that's why they wanted the Quaker graves out of their Newburyport or whatever.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I was reading. I mean, who knows what's really accurate unless you're then and there, but...
So yeah, I started researching this stuff, and I found a website just called archives.org, and on there they had a full 700-page book about the history of Newbury, Mass. And it's literally called History of Newbury, Mass, 1635 to 1902 by John J. Currier. And in that book, he had a whole section about the establishment of that cemetery and the meeting house that was right up the road from it.
Yeah,
and
that meeting house. The meeting house.
Yeah, we passed it on the way out. Mm-hmm. When that meeting house was established, they also bought that land, and they started burying people there immediately. So that kind of debunked the whole folklore that I had heard, that all of those graves were moved there. Most of those graves were actually buried there initially and haven't been moved. Now, where that story had come from, that all of them were moved, some of them were. Yeah, they estimated there was 5 to 10 or something like that graves that were moved from Washington Street in downtown Newburyport. So Washington Street today is just completely developed. And the reason they moved them is, you said that they didn't really want the Quakers there, which could have been the case. But from what I read in this book, it was because they were just trying to develop the land it was on. Mm. So they moved them out of there, which that kind of probably speaks to the disrespect that they had towards the Quakers, So they moved them all out of this cemetery on Washington Street, and they just built on top of it, and they moved them out to this Quaker cemetery.
They actually talked about moving them again in the article I was reading because they were worried about the artichoke flooding, but luckily to this day it hasn't flooded and washed over.
Yeah. I think they're worried about it washing out all the graves, and then they got bodies and stuff in there. That'd be wild. Yeah, and their drinking water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting. But also in this book as well, There was, when we were there, you mentioned an interesting name that you saw on one of the graves. And I think the name was,
No, that was your dad.
Yeah.
Pointed it out because he saw it twice.
Makaja.
Uh-huh.
It's Macajah.
Yeah, it's Hebrew.
Yep. Now, it's Hebrew, but all Hebrew names are biblical as well, because the Old Testament and, the Torah are pretty much the same thing. But, reading in this book, they talked about other Quaker establishments and meeting houses in Newburyport. And in downtown Newburyport, there was a meeting house that they had built, and they had bought the land off of a guy named Makaja Sawyer. So that kind of told me that name that we were interested in, that we had never saw before, that must have just been a really popular name then, because this is a totally different guy with the same name that we had never even seen before. But
well, I think when you have the original Bible was in Hebrew.
Yep.
So I think a lot of words come from, or names came from that biblical, like you said. And then you have we came from England, where Catholic was big and stuff. So those names back then were probably really popular, just like Michael is popular now.
Yeah, it could have just been popular in the Quaker community as well. Like maybe they had some kind of like biblical reasoning for it. I couldn't find much on it, but it would definitely be worth like looking into more, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what we'd look for.
Yeah,
because like you said, I think it's just going to come down to as a popular name. Then.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all it is. It's so funny. Like,
I mean, what do you think people in like 200 years are going to look up at the name Jacob and be like? I'm trying to think of like common names today that in 300 years do you think people are going to really look back and be like
Grayson?
Oh, Grayson.
Grayson's this. I know.
Grayson is one of those.
Maverick.
Names.
I know 3 Mavericks.
Yeah. Oh, nah. Everyone's just gonna be like, oh, that's a really old movie that everyone was obsessed with.
And all 3 of them are
pretty cool. There's some old overplayed actor in there.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I don't want Tom Cruise crying in my closet. Episode of South Park we watched last night.
Yes.
All because Stan didn't tell me he was the best actor. Oh, yeah. South Park. It's great. I'm going to mention South Park every time, I swear. But...
Well, we've been binging it lately, so that's the...
By binging it, we watch a couple episodes before bed, yeah.
Yeah.
In moderation. There was a couple days where we watched a lot of it. To the point where, like, okay, something else. But... Yeah, but, I mean, I just think Makaja is just going to be, like... a Grayson in 300. Is it really that?
And that's kind of what I suspect too, because I don't think at least what I was reading in the book, the guy they bought this land off of for their meeting house, I don't think he was a Quaker. He was like one of the doctors in town. And I think he was just the guy who owned the land previously. So it probably was just a popular name then. The thunder is rolling in.
Yeah, I love thunderstorms.
Yeah. We haven't had one in a while.
Well... We've had a hot week since we've been back, and then we were gone for a week and a half.
Yeah, very true.
So, but before that, that's like our whole summer has been thunderstorms. I love thunderstorms. I sent you that meme of this, like, raggedy-looking guy, someone says severe thunder, and he's just standing outside waiting for it. Yeah. But the cemetery was really pretty. I liked it because it kind of just looked like a nature hike.
Yeah.
You could see the artichoke, which I would have just thought was a lake, not a man-made reservoir.
Yep.
I've got pictures of the swans. They were cute.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, as far as, like, research into other... Because even I looked into it, too, just to see if there was, like, some kind of folklore of haunted happenings there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And that could just be because it's probably not a super popular site, or...
Yeah. And as we said earlier, I mean, it doesn't seem to be that well kept. I mean, the forest reclaimed it, and then they just recently started upkeeping it, and by upkeeping it, they cut a little trail so you can get back there, and that's it. The trail goes, like, right over their graves. It's like, oh, man. But...
Yeah, that's the only part that made me uneasy, but just because I'm superstitious, so...
Yeah.
I'm careful to avoid that kind of stuff, unlike people They'll just grab a headstone.
You know, it was...
But, like, that's what the volunteers did. I was looking at some photos where they were putting stones that had broken in half back together and stuff.
Yeah, I had heard, because, you know how the boundaries of this place were all like a rock wall? I had heard that in the back right corner, like through the woods where there was no graves, all back there's a bunch of headstones that had broken off, and they didn't know where they went, so they just put them back there.
Oh.
So maybe if we're ever there again, we could venture out that way and see if those are over there. But I also thought there wasn't really much organization to the headstones either.
Not at all.
They were just scattered all over the place. And then, I mean, also, I think the woods and the trees growing between them just added to the disorganization of it. But yeah, pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the next one.
Not my favorite cemetery.
Yeah, no, because we gotta. It's fun.
It was definitely pretty, but I liked the history of the Portsmouth one, and obviously I was partial to the Erie, Colorado graveyard just because I had strange things happen there.